Okay, I'm going to start this morning by just welcoming everyone. Sawadee Kap, welcome. Nice to see you guys here at Wat Tung. Today is our group learning program where I share the teachings of the Buddha with students to help them understand the path to enlightenment and how to move to this enlightened mental state where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. We just restarted this a few weeks ago, and I've been teaching a 3-part series on the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha, which is going to help you to be able to get to enlightenment. You wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without the Eightfold Path. It's this path that's going to teach you how to train your mind and make your way to this enlightened mental state. In this program, we use the first book of the book series that I share. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. It's volume 1 of the Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden book series. And each Sunday I go chapter by chapter in this book, helping students to understand the path to enlightenment. And it's a 7-month program. Students can come here to the temple. You can join online through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. And there's even recordings. So if you don't make the live classes, you can actually attend through the recordings. And what you're gradually doing is building up your practice to train your mind to experience the enlightened mental state where you no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, the resentment, the hostility, all of that is eliminated. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. You get to a point where your mind's focused and concentrated, have clarity of mind and deep memory. And you'll notice your personal, professional relationships will really blossom because you don't have this bitterness and hostility in the mind anymore. And you're able to function in your relationships with ease. So if you're interested in experiencing this and learning about how to train your mind, that's what this type of program is for. So I'd like to welcome you here at the temple. Welcome everyone online. Today is the 3rd part of our 3-part series on the Eightfold Path. I'm going to be sharing with you the mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path, which is right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. I'm going to be sharing with you the words of the Buddha of what he taught on this important topic, and then I'm going to help you to understand how to implement it into your life so you can experience the results. We start our class with meditation to be able to help you learn a bit about meditation and training your mind. So I'll guide you guys in a meditation session, and then afterwards I'll move into sharing the teachings of the Buddha to help you on this path to enlightenment. So if you'd like to join for meditation, the way that I do this is I start with a chant in order to ease the mind into meditation. We have these chants that are in the Pali language. The Pali language is the original language of the teachings of the Buddha. They're captured in this particular language. And Robert's handing out these chanting sheets. If you'd like to chant along as I chant, you're welcome to. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, that everything he taught was oral. So about once every 2 weeks, they would come together and they would, excuse me, got a pepper in my throat from breakfast. Once every 2 weeks, they would come together and they would chant his teachings word for word in order to commit them to memory. So today, we don't need to chant in order to commit teachings to memory. We have books, we have videos, podcasts, things like this. But I still do this chanting as a way to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you read the English translations, you see a lot of respect and gratitude and admiration for the Buddha. I don't think that the Buddha actually created these chants himself. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death, as a way to honor and respect him for helping them to move their mind from this anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings to the peace and the joy that is the enlightened mind. Because an individual who's enlightened doesn't have ego. They don't walk around being arrogant and prideful and trying to show off or try to convince people to do any one particular thing or another, or try to get people to chant to them. So the Buddha wouldn't have created these chants himself, but instead his students probably created them either during his life or after his death. These chants, they're not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. None of those things actually lead to enlightenment. You need to cultivate wisdom in order to get to enlightenment. There are no rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship in the teachings of the Buddha. Even if you see people doing these things, associating them with Buddhism, the Buddha himself didn't actually teach these things. So these chants, they're not a prayer or worship or anything like that. It just helps you to build awareness of mind and awareness of the breath as you ease into the meditation. Once we get into the meditation, I'll then provide you some guidance so that you can understand how to actually meditate while we're meditating together. Those of us here and everyone online will just all be meditating together. And then there'll be a period of time after the guidance where it'll just be quiet. And we'll be meditating. I'm sure you'll hear the occasional bird chirping or maybe a dog barking or a car going by, but you can train your mind to not be affected by those impermanent situations. You'll hear sounds that are impermanent. These things happen. As you hear a sound, you'll see in the meditation, just bring your mind back to the breath. Don't allow your mind to follow that. Then after the period of time where we're just meditating, we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And again, you guys are welcome to join in before and after as you like with the chanting. In terms of helping you with a little bit of body positioning, in terms of meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught in order to meditate in. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking. Usually when you're first learning, you're learning in the seated position. And oftentimes people are either in a chair, on the floor, or any number of different places that you could sit. They even have little benches that they meditate on. If you're sitting on the floor, you might just sit with your legs lightly crossed. If you have them real tight, it'll impede the circulation, and this will cause pain in the body, and it will be very challenging for you to meditate while you're experiencing pain. Some people like to even put their legs off the mat, and this gets the hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. So this will keep your lower body nice and comfortable. The hands and the arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. And if this is comfortable for you, you could use this, but not everyone's going to find this comfortable necessarily. So there's other options as well. It's not about everybody doing things exactly the same way. So some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people even put their palms up or just rest their hands comfortably in their lap. And then for those of you guys that are sitting in chairs, some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles. And then the same thing with the hands and arms. You just place things wherever it feels comfortable for you. There's not just one right way to position the body. There's lots of different bodies, lots of different experiences that people will have, and feel free to sit however is comfortable for you. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. It also helps you to breathe. Whereas if your sternum's up and your shoulders back, you'll be able to breathe more naturally into the body, and it'll help you in meditation. And it'll keep your mind attentive and alert during the meditation so you can actively train the mind during your meditation. So if you'd like to join along for the meditation, I'm going to do the chanting to ease us in, and then I'll be back with some guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Wat Tung Bhagavannang Abhivateyami Savakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho วิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังปุโตภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Once the breath is well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. มาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาพุทธังมหาเกวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสัคคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would slowly like to make your way out of meditation, just make your way out nice and easy. For those of you guys here at the temple, I'd like to just let you know that there's a bathroom in the back of the room, the very last door on the right. You're welcome to use it at any time. We even have bathrooms outside the main classroom. You're welcome to help yourself. You'll follow the signs around. You'll see the main bathrooms outside. And we even have water, and even some snacks are starting to show up that's provided by our students. So you guys are welcome to help yourself, make yourself comfortable. So once again, welcome to all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone online that's joining us, including those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Today's class is all about learning the mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path, where you're going to understand what the Buddha taught about right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is the third part of a three-part series where I've been sharing the Eightfold Path with students. And here at the beginning of the group learning program, it's important to learn the Eightfold Path because the Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha. Without the Eightfold Path, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. This is the path to enlightenment. When we talk about developing a life practice, this is the life practice that you're developing. And so far, I've been teaching the wisdom section and the moral conduct section. I taught students 2 weeks ago about right view. This is where you're learning about the three universal truths and the four noble truths. In 4 simple statements, the Buddha helps you to understand the problem in the unenlightened mind is discontentedness, where the mind's experiencing conditioned feelings. The mind's going up and down, experiencing pleasant feelings and then feeling painful feelings and feeling feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. This is the problem, that the mind is forming conditioned discontent feelings based on some condition. Then in the second noble truth, as part of right view, the Buddha explains the cause of discontentedness is craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning. This is what's causing the mind to experience this. The mind is wanting a particular thing, and if it gets what it wants, it gets those pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, then you experience painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. This is very painful for the mind to experience. Then there's feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant, kind of like unsatisfactoriness or displeasure, or kind of just being uncomfortable. Kind of shyness is a good example of neither painful nor pleasant. So the cause of these discontent feelings in the mind, where the mind's going up and down, is craving, desire, attachment, this longing, this yearning. The mind's wanting something. And particularly in the unenlightened state, the mind will typically blame its discontent feelings on somebody else. You'll think somebody else is causing you to be angry, or somebody else is annoying you. But in reality, it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And this is why in the third noble truth, the Buddha explains that you can eliminate these discontent feelings by training your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. You can get to the peace and to the joy where the mind is permanently happy because your mind has eliminated its cravings, desires, attachments, that the mind is practicing this middle way where you're pursuing things as a goal, as an objective or an interest. And meditation is part of that training, but the mental discipline that I'm going to teach you today is going to teach you how to eliminate these discontent feelings through eliminating the cravings, desires, attachments. And then the fourth noble truth, as part of right view, the Buddha is explaining that it's the Eightfold Path. That is the path that leads to enlightenment. That it's the path that leads to the elimination of discontentedness. So with right view, you establish the right view that it's your mind that's causing these discontent feelings. If you went around with the thought that other people are causing you to be angry and frustrated and irritated and all these other discontent feelings, you'll tend to push people away out of your life, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But it doesn't solve the problem because you just get angry or annoyed or frustrated about something else. It's just a matter of time. So you can see you didn't solve the problem by pushing people away or pushing the situation away. Or you might become bitter and harsh and hostile towards somebody with your intentions, your speech, and your actions because you're misunderstanding the problem. You're thinking that the cause of the problem is something external, so you might be bitter, harsh, and hostile towards someone. Or you might put your expectations on somebody, trying to convince them to do things your way. And in this situation, you're stuck in this continuous cycle of experiencing discontentedness over and over and over again because the mind lacks the wisdom of right view, thinking that something external is causing your discontent feelings. So therefore, the mind will keep blaming other people and it'll push people away. It'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or put your expectations on people. So having wrong view would be to blame other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. But having right view is to have responsibility and accept accountability for the feelings that you're experiencing, that any feelings you experience is coming from within your own mind. And this can be very empowering because once you understand that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings, then you can actually work to eliminate them. But if you didn't have right view to realize your mind was causing these feelings, then you'll just stay stuck in this continuous cycle of continuing to experience discontentedness over and over. So right view is a real foundation in order to then get started on the rest of the path. It helps you to form the wisdom of why it is that you're even learning the path to enlightenment, is to train your own mind to experience the peace and joy by understanding that it's your own mind's craving, desire, attachment, or these pollution or defilements that are causing the mind to experience these discontent feelings. Then you develop right intention. Right intention or right thinking or right thought, there's three aspects to this. There's the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. The intention of a renunciation is to be willing to let go of false beliefs, false opinions, these kinds of things that the mind is holding on to. If your mind is experiencing anger and sadness and frustration and any of these other discontent feelings, there's certain wisdom that your mind doesn't currently have right now. And that's why you would come to learn at a temple and learn with a teacher or learn from books so that you can learn the wisdom that it's going to take to train your own mind. But if you held on to what you currently are thinking about the world, you'll continue to have that lack of wisdom, and then your mind's going to continue to experience the discontent feelings over and over. So by practicing the intention of renunciation, you're willing to let go, give up the unwholesomeness, bring in this wisdom from the teachings of the Buddha to now be fully informed about true reality and what's happening around you, so that then now you can make a real effort towards getting to enlightenment. But if you were to just cling to your current views and your current opinions, you wouldn't be able to do that. So you're going to need to cultivate wisdom. So the teachings of the Buddha, it's not about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. It's also not about eliminating certain beliefs and bringing in new beliefs. The teachings of the Buddha, there's no belief whatsoever. You're learning teachings, you're reflecting on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false, and then you're practicing his teachings in order to transform your mind and get to this enlightened mental state. But if you didn't practice the intention of renunciation where you're willing to let go, you're going to hold on to your false opinions and your false views. You're not going to have an open mind to learning what you need to learn in order to get to enlightenment. So one of the very first false opinions and views you're going to need to eliminate is that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated or annoyed. You're going to need to come to the wisdom through studying right view in the Four Noble Truths that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings. And this is where you can actually solve the problem, because you understand what the real cause of it is. So there's the intention of renunciation, which is the willingness to let go and bring in this wisdom. There's the intention of non-ill will or goodwill, this loving kindness, and the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Because as long as you cause harm to others, this harm is going to come back to you. Then this wisdom helps you to now develop your moral conduct. And you start to understand that if you cause harm to other beings, this harm is going to come back to you. So when the Buddha taught moral conduct of right speech, right action, and right livelihood, this was to help you make wise decisions around your moral conduct so that you're not causing harm to others and unwholesome things aren't coming back to you. Because it would be very hard to get to peace and joy in your life if you were constantly doing harmful things to others, and these harmful things are coming back to you, and you're constantly being bombarded by unwholesome results in your life. So by you making wise decisions around your moral conduct, this will improve what you experience coming back to you in the world. So the Buddha taught right speech as eliminating lying, eliminating slander or gossip, eliminating harsh speech, and eliminating frivolous speech. He didn't teach this as rules or commandments. He wasn't trying to convince you or force you to do anything. He's just showing you this natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result, where you can see that, yes, when you make the decision to lie or slander or gossip or speak harshly or aggressively, to have frivolous speech, which is just idle chatter, like yada, 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 yada. When you do these things, it's causing harm in the world, and then you experience the unwholesome results coming back to you. So by you improving your moral conduct, you'll experience improvements in your relationships. He even takes it further with speech, and he talks about the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, where you learn about speaking at the right time, what you say is true, you speak gentle, you speak beneficially, and you speak with a mind of loving kindness. And you can learn the detail around this because I share this in the book, in the audiobooks, in the other classes, certain videos where I teach this, where you can dial this in closer and closer in your life. Because during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was right speech because that's all they had was speech. But nowadays, we might think about this step as right communication because we write emails, we have text messages, we have social media, all these other things. You could potentially go into a job interview and you could speak really well at the job interview and they might be interested in hiring you. But if they looked at your social media and you were aggressive and hostile and bitter or saying other things that would be unwise, you might not get the job. So you would like to purify all your communications so that you can then practice wise communication, and now you experience wholesome results coming back to you. Then the Buddha taught right action, which is ensuring that we don't cause harm through our bodily actions, because when we cause harm through our bodily actions, that harm's going to come back to us. And he talks about 3 important things to pay attention to, like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. These are 3 very impactful decisions that you could make around bodily actions. He doesn't give an exhaustive list of every single thing you could do to cause harm with your body, because this is what you need to figure out. Moving to a higher consciousness, you need to have discernment or wise decision making, where you're making decisions about how you interact in the world with your body, and you're ensuring that you're not causing harm to other beings or yourself with your bodily actions. So these three that he talks about of killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, he gives details on this in the 5 precepts, which we're going to study in this program when we get to chapter 7, and you'll see the details around that, how he talks about living compassionately for all living beings, and a lot of other teachings that he shares. So right action is to ensure we're not causing harm through our bodily actions. And then what right livelihood is, this is how you choose to sustain your life, your job or occupation. How do you acquire the resources that you need in order to sustain your life? So if you have a livelihood where you're not causing harm to others, this will produce wholesome results for you. Whereas if you sustain your life off of causing harm to other beings, then this is going to be problematic in your life, because now that harm's going to come back to you. So he provides some guidance around livelihood, where he says it would be unwise to have a business in weapons, in meat, in living beings, in substances that cause heedlessness, in poisons. That if you had business in these 5 things, that this would cause harm to other beings, and now that harm's going to come back to you. Because if you're selling weapons, if you're selling meat, if you're selling living beings, if you're selling substances that cause heedlessness or poisons, all of these things are causing harm to other beings. So as you choose a livelihood in your life, you would like to choose one that isn't one of those, because you would be sustaining your life off of causing harm to other beings. And you can independently verify these teachings. You can see, if you take any of those 5 livelihoods, you can see how they cause harm to others, and now harm will come back to you. You can see examples from your own life if you've done any of those things, or you can see it from other people's life. Then the Buddha goes even further, and he talks about how you conduct your livelihood. He talks about scheming. He talks about flattery, belittling, pursuing gain with gain. He talks about speaking clearly, not hinting around. So he gives you these guidance about how to conduct your livelihood in wise ways that would produce wholesome results for you. Again, they're not rules. They're not commandments. Nobody's coming to enforce them, right? He's not talking about punishments if you don't do these particular things. He's not guilt shaming or fearing you into doing anything at all. He's just sharing with you what it took for him to get to this enlightened mental state, so that then if you're interested in developing a peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life, you can experience that for yourself. Ultimately, by the time you purify your livelihood, it won't even feel like work anymore. Depending on what type of job you have right now, you might feel like you have to drag yourself to work each day. You might be really unmotivated with the things that you're doing. And if that's the case, then you can always make different decisions. You can change to a different job. So the Buddha is giving you guidance about the type of occupation or livelihood that you might decide to consider, so that by the time you get to a right livelihood, you feel enthused and motivated and encouraged in the work that you're doing. As you're contributing to the world with some product or service, that you feel ambition and motivation behind the work that you're doing. Because if you're trying to train your mind to get to this peace and joy, but 8 hours a day you show up somewhere that you don't like being, and it feels miserable for you to be there, you're not going to be able to experience the peace and joy that the Buddha is talking about with the enlightened mind. So you would like to sustain your life in a way that doesn't cause harm to other beings, but also you're motivated and feel enthusiasm, encouragement about doing the work that you're actually doing. So this is the moral conduct section, but now we're going to move into the mental discipline section, where you're learning right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. I walked through all those previous steps, all those 5 steps, using the original words of the Buddha, and I did this over a 2-part series. And if you haven't seen that, it's okay, because I did it live over the last 2 weeks, but it's been recorded. It's on our YouTube channel, it's on Facebook, it's on our podcast. You can digest that content. You can learn it in our books and our audiobooks and things like that, because it's important to learn the detail of each individual step and dial it in closer and closer. Because now we're going to move into the mental discipline section. And what you're doing on the Eightfold Path is you're dialing in each one of these factors closer and closer in your life. It would be impossible for you to learn it once and then implement it perfectly right after that. You're going to need to gradually build this up in your life. It's like if you had a speaker system that you were trying to get really good quality sound out of the speakers, you would sit there and tweak the dials, these 8 dials. You would tweak them and tweak them and tweak them and tweak them and try to get this really good quality sound coming out of the speakers. And the same thing is true about your life, that you can dial in these 8 factors and you'll be able to get a better and better quality mind, a better and quality life. Your relationships will improve. You'll see that life will be at ease because you'll be practicing based on the wisdom of the natural laws of existence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into each one of these steps, sharing the original words of the Buddha, and then I'm going to break it down for you and help you to understand it and reflect on it so that you can verify the truth, and then you can implement it in your life in a life practice and dial this in closer and closer. But just understand that what I'm going to share with you today is based on the things that I've already taught of the Eightfold Path, and understand that you wouldn't be able to learn this one time and be able to implement it perfectly right away. You're going to need to gradually build this up in your life over time. So here, this is right effort. The Buddha says, in what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort. So here the Buddha is describing 4 things that you would like to do in order to dial these teachings in on a mental level closer and closer. I'm going to break this down for you here on the next screen, where you're going to see that there's 4 aspects to right effort. And then I'm going to give you some examples to understand how to implement this into your life. The first thing that the Buddha is talking about here is prevent unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising. Okay, so he's saying anything that's unwholesome, that is currently not in your mind, prevent it from ever coming in your mind. And the example that I think about here is that generally human beings don't have an interest in killing another human being. That's something that's very far from your mind. It's nowhere in your mind right now. And the Buddha is saying, prevent this from ever coming in your mind. Apply the effort. This is the right effort to prevent this from ever coming in your mind. But there's anything that's currently not in your mind. There are certain unwholesome mental states that are far from your mind right now. Like you probably aren't thinking about walking up to your mom and punching her in the face either, right? That's something that's not in your mind. Prevent that from ever coming into the mind. That's what the Buddha is saying, is apply the effort to do that, right? So any kind of unwholesome mental state that's not currently in your mind, apply the effort to prevent it from ever coming into the mind. The second one is abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. So right now, there's currently certain unwholesome mental states that are in your mind. And the Buddha is saying, apply the effort to abandon those, eliminate them, eradicate them out of the mind. Some examples that I thought about are things like maybe a craving for sexual contact outside of an existing relationship. If you're in an existing relationship and you have a craving to go outside that relationship, that will cause harm to your partner and it will cause harm to other people. This is why we get sexually transmitted diseases. And this is why people get beat up and murdered and things like this when these things occur. This is why you lose your reputation in a community if you go outside your relationships. This is the natural law of karma. The natural law of karma is not punishments and rewards. It's just happening. It's a sequence of events. It's cause and effect, or action and result. So if you have a craving for sexual contact outside of your existing relationship, knowing it's unwise to do that, you can apply the right effort to abandon that and eliminate it out of the mind, because it's just going to produce unwholesome results in your life. Or if you have anger, frustration, irritation that's arising in the mind, you can apply the effort to cut that off and let it go. Then the third aspect here is produce unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. This is any wholesome mental states that are not currently in your mind. The Buddha is saying apply the effort to bring those into your mind, right? Because there's certain wholesome mental states that you're going to learn about on this path to enlightenment that are not currently in your mind. And you're going to need to apply the effort to bring those into the mind in order to practice them on a regular day-to-day basis. And then it'll be easier for you to practice them once you bring them into the mind through applying this right effort to bring them into the mind. So examples might be something like generosity. You're going to learn on this path to enlightenment that practicing the giving and sharing of your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. This is part of the path. You're going to need to learn to not be selfish and hold on to things very tightly. Whereas if you held on to things really tightly, the mind would be selfish. You need to learn how to give and share with people around you. So if you know that your mind isn't currently generous and you find it hard to share, then you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this generosity into your mind. That's what the Buddha is talking about with this particular aspect of producing unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. You'll also learn about compassion. Compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. If you find that you're kind of indifferent and you could care less what happens to other beings, and it's like, that's their life, who cares? That's a lack of compassion. So if you don't have compassion in your mind, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring that into the mind, right? And as part of this path, as part of this program, I'll teach you how to do this. So you're going to need to practice this third aspect of right effort to bring in wholesome qualities that are not currently in your mind. Then the fourth one is maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not allowing them to fade away, and work to increase their growth in the mind. This is any wholesome mental states that are currently in your mind. You're going to need to bring those to full development and full perfection. You're going to need to apply the effort to fully expand those and have the mind permeating with those particular qualities. An example might be loving kindness. Loving kindness is active goodwill for all beings, where you probably have loving kindness in your mind, perhaps, where you do have an interest in seeing other beings be well. You do have goodwill, but maybe in some cases you don't. Maybe you have kind of like ill will towards people. You kind of, are doing harmful things in certain situations for certain people. You wish them harm. Maybe you get angry and bitter or harsh with certain people. Well, that's because the mind hasn't fully brought loving kindness to full growth and full perfection. You're going to need to apply the effort to do that. Or the sympathetic joy. Sympathetic joy is the opposite of jealousy or envy. Sympathetic joy is joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to their success. So maybe in some situations, you see something good happens for your friends, and you're like, oh, I'm so happy for you. That's wonderful. Congratulations. But maybe in other situations, you're kind of jealous or you're kind of envious of something that's occurred. And this is because this sympathetic joy hasn't been brought to full growth and full development. But you can apply the right effort to bring that into the mind so you can fully eradicate any jealousy or envy in the mind. And you can have joy for others' success. Right? So this just takes time to gradually build up the mind, applying right effort. So this is the step of right effort that the Buddha is teaching you here. And I'm going to pause to see if you guys have any questions. You can ask questions here at the temple. You can ask questions online. If you're here at the temple and you like to ask questions, we have microphones here in the white bowl in front of the camera. You just press the gray button on the front and the lights will come on. And then you just wait a second or two and hold it up to your mouth. And then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple. And they'll be able to hear you online too, so that everyone can participate in class. And those of you guys in Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom, you can ask questions by putting that into the comment section. I'll be able to see that. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, open up your microphone, and then we'll be able to hear you. And you can ask your question that way. So are there any questions here at the temple or any questions online that you guys would like to ask about right effort? Okay, you have a question, David? Yeah, if you could get the microphone. And then if you guys would like to keep these microphones with you, that's fine. We have plenty of microphones because that way you can share them around the people around you, or you might need it yourself again. So once you pick one up, you can take it back to your seat and just kind of keep it with you during the class.
So therefore, would you include, for example, the effort to focus on the breath during meditation as right effort?
That's the aspect of the fourth one, maintain wholesome mental states. So if you have the wholesome mental state that you're practicing, where you're practicing meditation and that's a wholesome quality that you're doing, you're focusing on the breath and that's what you're being taught to do, that would be the fourth aspect of right effort, because that's a wholesome quality that you're developing. And now you need to bring that to full growth and full perfection.
Would you include that any example of right effort would fall into one of these four categories? Or would you say there's other right effort that is outside of these four categories?
These are all four. This fully encompasses right effort 100%. There's nothing about the teachings of the Buddha that need to be changed. If somebody was thinking that the teachings of the Buddha need to be changed in any way or another, this is someone who doesn't quite yet understand the teachings of the Buddha 100%. If somebody has trained their mind to get to enlightenment through the teachings of the Buddha, they would be able to see through final knowledge that his teachings lead exactly where he said they do, to this enlightened mental state. So in some cases, there might be a situation where someone thinks that the teachings of the Buddha need to be changed or modified in one way or another. And this is just because the individual hasn't learned fully what the teachings of the Buddha are yet. Once you learn what they are 100%, you can see that he described perfectly how to get to enlightenment.
So then, for example, the effort that a person puts into their livelihood, their right livelihood, to maintain themselves and their family, would you include that in the category of right effort, or would you more put that into right livelihood, as it were?
If we're talking about effort,
yes,
then it's under right effort, because having a livelihood that will support your family would be a wholesome quality. That would be number 4. So say you currently have a right livelihood and you would like to apply effort to improve that further, that would be number 4, the fourth aspect, because you've already got something that you're doing that's wholesome, and now you'd like to bring it to full growth and full perfection. You're applying the effort to do that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Okay, let's see if we have any questions here online. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions online. So now what I'm going to do, by the way, these examples here that I'm providing you, these are just examples that I'm using in class to illustrate the 4 right efforts. These examples are going to be unique to you, right? You're going to have certain things that are already in your mind or certain things that are unwholesome that you need to prevent. So like here with generosity, where I say, and I give the example where that's outside somebody's mind and it needs to be brought into their mind, maybe you're already generous and that's a wholesome quality that you need to now bring to full growth and full perfection. Or maybe some of these other things that you don't have in your mind. So you're going to need to use this next step that I'm going to be sharing with you in order to discern and figure out which aspect of these right effort you need to actually practice. So you wouldn't actually be able to practice right effort without practicing this next step that I'm now going to share with you. Okay? Kushi, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a few questions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand like the difference between compassion and loving kindness. And I also have one more question, like if there is compassion and loving kindness in the mind, like goodwill for others, but there is some anger or irritation, but how is it related to ill will and not just me having those negative feelings? I'm not having those negative feelings towards others, but it is just me who is not having right view sometimes. So how would you explain that?
You mean you're having negative feelings towards yourself, this being who you are, but not others?
Not towards myself, but because I don't have right view, that's why sometimes I would have this little irritation or something. And how is it related to ill will towards others?
I see. So all of these steps, all these factors are working together to bring the mind to this brightness and this radiance, this peace and this joy, right? So everything starts with right view. If you don't have right view, it's going to be very challenging for you to then have loving kindness for other beings or for yourself, or even compassion potentially. So that's why everything starts with right view. If you didn't have right view, you would potentially think that everyone else is the problem, and that's what is going on in your life. And now you're not able to cultivate loving kindness for others because the mind, with its anger and hostility, with its conceit, thinks everybody else is the problem. And now the mind thinks that I need to go around and fix everybody else, or the world is so horrible because of everybody else, not realizing that it's your own mind that's thinking that way. So what you're doing on this path is you're, in addition to learning all these things and dialing these things, is you're changing your perspective. And you're, through this wisdom that you're cultivating, you're changing your perspective and seeing that the things that you're experiencing in life is based on your decisions, not what other people are doing. So you can cultivate this loving kindness and compassion through, yes, you would need to establish right view, and then that's what everything else on the path is built upon.
Okay, and is that ill will produced that way is towards others, is what you're saying, when there is not 100% of right view established?
Yeah, if you still have anger and frustration towards others, you haven't fully established right view. You might have understood the Four Noble Truths, but you're not practicing them, right? This is that fetter of ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality, that is hindering the mind from fully implementing the eradication of sensual desire and ill will. That there are certain tools and techniques that we use in addition to what you're seeing here that plug into the Eightfold Path, that help you to be able to implement these teachings to get to the point where loving kindness is fully cultivated. So you're going to need to develop a loving kindness meditation practice, which we're going to talk about here in a moment, to be able to then train the mind to be able to be loving and kind in all situations. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the seventh step of the Eightfold Path. Like I mentioned, without the seventh step, which is right mindfulness, you wouldn't be able to practice right effort. Because here with right effort, you need to be aware of your mind in order to apply this effort to either prevent unwholesome things from coming into the mind, or eradicate certain unwholesome things that are already in the mind, or to bring in wholesome things into the mind, or to support and encourage wholesome things that are already in the mind. So this next one, right mindfulness, is what's going to then help you to be able to practice right effort. So I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to read through this, I'm going to teach it to you, and then I'm going to open up to any questions that you guys might have. So here the Buddha says, in what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides, reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. This is called right mindfulness. What right mindfulness is awareness of mind. But more specifically, it's the four foundations of mindfulness. This is what the Buddha is talking about here. But when you first get started with right mindfulness, you might just think about it as awareness of mind. This is a good place to start if you're not yet ready to start focusing on the four foundations of mindfulness. But ultimately, to get to enlightenment, you will need to develop the four foundations of mindfulness. But first, let's just talk about awareness of mind. What awareness of mind is aware of your thoughts, your ideas, your feelings, the things that are going on in your mind. We typically don't necessarily have that awareness when we're off the path to enlightenment. We might be just going through life, plowing through life, knocking down trees, burning up the forest. We kind of get to a certain point in our life and we look back and we see all these trees that have been knocked down. We see all this smoke and this smoldering, and we're like, who lit the fire? Who knocked down all the trees? Well, it was us who knocked down all the trees. It was us who started that fire. But we tend to blame it on other people, right? So we don't tend to be aware that we're going through life selfishly, just trying to do things that are self-centered for ourselves. So we tend to not have awareness of mind. So we plow through the forest, we knock down the trees, we're burning up the forest, and we don't even realize we're making all these unwise decisions. So what you might decide to do when you first get started on the path to enlightenment is just practice this step as awareness of mind. That you'd like to just develop some awareness of what's going on in your mind. And this is a good place to start. And the 8th step is going to help you to be able to do that. But you just need to have this general awareness of the mind. But then, as you're getting going with that, you would like to develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is where you become aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. What this is this is the life cycle that discontentedness is going to take when you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind. When you have certain mental longing and strong eagerness, wanting things to be a certain way, that's a craving, desire, attachment in the mind. And when you experience contact through your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, the body, and the mind itself, if you get something that you agree with, if one of your cravings is getting fulfilled, you're going to get pleasant feelings. You're going to get happy, excited, elated. But if you have contact through the 6 sense bases and it's something you disagree with, you're going to get angry or frustrated or annoyed or some other painful feeling, right? This is what the mind is experiencing. But before those feelings come into the mind, there's going to be a bodily sensation that's occurring. This is what the Buddha is teaching you, is that you need to be aware of these bodily sensations, because this is like an early warning system, alerting you that, hey, your mind is about to become discontent. So in terms of anger, if you've ever experienced like tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, pain in your heart, tightening in your throat, heat in your face, pressure in your skull. These are all bodily sensations that are attributed to the craving, desire, attachment in the mind that's causing this discontentedness to get ready to start to arise. And you're getting this early warning system. You're getting this early warning through your bodily sensations of that, hey, this discontentedness is about to arise. And you can take action there. And you can actually fix it. You can address it if you like. That's what the Buddha is teaching you, ultimately with right effort. That when you notice this arising in the mind, that you can then start to eliminate it, right? There might be a certain bodily sensation, not just with anger and the painful feelings, but even with the pleasant feelings or the feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. You're going to notice that there's this bodily sensation associated with any kind of conditioned feeling. So say, for example, you're at a stoplight and somebody pulls up next to you with some music that you particularly think is wonderful because of your craving. You're like, yeah, that's my jam. All right, come on, let's go. You start noticing that there's going to be this tingling sensation from the pleasant feelings. Perhaps you get this little tingle across your shoulders or up the back of your neck or around your head. This is the pleasant feelings that are arising. There's going to be bodily sensations first, right? And then it's going to become a feeling. But also, if somebody pulls up next to you in a light and you hear this music that you disagree with based on your cravings, your desires, your attachments, there's going to be annoyance or frustration or agitation that's starting to arise. It's not the music that's causing it. It's not the person who's playing the music that's causing that frustration. It's your craving, desire, attachment that's causing that. So there's going to be some bodily sensations prior to your mind becoming frustrated or agitated or annoyed that you may or may not be aware of right now. So what the Buddha is teaching you here with right mindfulness is start to develop this awareness of these bodily sensations that are occurring prior to the mind experiencing a feeling. Because what you would like to do is cut off and let go of that feeling that is getting ready to arise as just a bodily sensation. If you can cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation, you've preserved the mind. Your mind doesn't have to get angry. It doesn't have to get annoyed. Essentially, your mind is trying to form this conditioned feeling, and you're saying, nope, I'm not going to let you do that. And you keep doing that over and over and over and over again. And eventually the mind doesn't form conditioned feelings. Because the problem with a conditioned feeling is that it arises, it changes, and it fades away. So the happiness that you experience is ultimately displeasing because it's only temporary. In the unenlightened state, you experience happiness, you experience excitement, but it's temporary. So ultimately it's displeasing because you ultimately end up back in the painful feelings. So you might get so excited when your mom says, hey, I'm going to come visit you today. I heard, or I'm going to visit you this weekend. I heard you got a new apartment, a new condo. I'd like to come visit you and spend some time with you. You might get so excited. Yay, mom's coming to visit. Oh, this is going to be so wonderful. This is going to be great. You have this conditioned feeling that based on the condition of mom coming to visit, I am now excited. The mind is now excited. I'm so happy mom's coming to visit based on this agreeable contact and this craving to spend time with mom. Well, now, maybe a day or two before she's supposed to come, she calls you up and she says, hey, I can't come. I've had something come up. I'm not able to come. Now your happiness is gone. Your excitement's gone. You're frustrated, you're angry, you're annoyed. And you might even blame it on mom, thinking that mom's the problem. But in reality, it's your mind's own craving. That when you allowed the mind to experience that conditioned feeling of happiness and excitement, that condition is only impermanent. It's temporary. So that means your happiness is temporary. So if you can train your mind to not experience this conditioned pleasant feeling, then you won't experience this conditioned painful feeling because of impermanence, because things are going to change in your life. They're not going to be permanent. So if you have craving for mom to come see you, when she says she's going to come see you, you'll be happy, you'll be excited. But when her plans change due to impermanence, not because she doesn't love you, but just because of impermanence or plans change, you'll be sad or frustrated or irritated. So if you can build awareness of these bodily sensations, that you can notice that the feeling is about to be formed, now you can cut it off and let it go, and you can retrain your mind to not experience these conditioned feelings. Essentially what this is like if you were in a boat and you were going from like Australia to Indonesia. You would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water comes into the boat, you have a real problem to deal with. You got to get this water out. So if we allow the conditioned feeling to come into the mind, now you've got to get that anger and sadness and frustration out. Sometimes when I talk about this, people think what you're doing is suppressing your feelings. That's not what you're actually doing. You're not suppressing your feelings. By cutting off at the bodily sensation, applying right effort to cut off and let go of any feeling that's potentially going to arise as a bodily sensation, you're cutting it off and eliminating it before it ever becomes a feeling. It's not a feeling and then you suppress it. You're actually getting way ahead of the curve. You're not even allowing the mind to form a conditioned feeling. You're getting these conditions out of the way so that the mind can always be happy and always be joyful. Whereas if you can only be happy if your bank account is here, then that means when the bank account goes here, you'll be sad. Or if you can only be happy when it's sunny outside, that means when it's raining or some other weather, you'll be sad or frustrated or irritated. Or if you can only be happy when mom comes to see you, then that means when mom doesn't come to see you, you're going to miss her. You're going to feel lonely. You're going to feel bored. There's all these different things that the unenlightened mind is forming its feelings based on. These are called conditioned feelings. This is craving, desire, attachment. So if you can get awareness of the mind, of these bodily sensations that are arising, and you can take action to cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation, you've preserved the mind. And essentially what you're doing is you're retraining the mind to no longer experience these conditioned feelings. Because as you see these bodily sensations and you know the mind's about to create a conditioned feeling, you say, nope, I'm not going to let you do that. And then you see it again. You see the bodily sensations occurring. Nope, I'm not going to let you do that. And you cut this off and cut it off and cut it off and let it go. But because your mind's not fully trained, and you're not going to be able to do this right away as soon as you learn it, because your mind needs to be fully developed, your mind is going to experience some conditioned feelings. Between now and the time you get to enlightenment, you're not going to catch it as a bodily sensation, particularly cravings, desires, attachments that are very strong. You're not going to catch it as a bodily sensation. It's going to become a feeling. So you can apply right effort there. If your mind's angry, if it's frustrated, if it's agitated or annoyed, you can cut it off and let it go there as a feeling. And now, if you don't cut it off as a feeling and let it go there, it's going to start affecting the condition of your mind. This is where you've been angry or agitated or annoyed for like a couple of hours or a couple of days. Have you ever been angry for a week or two? Of course you have, right? Of course you have. You've been annoyed, you've been agitated. This is because you didn't understand this. You didn't understand the natural laws. You didn't understand what was going on in the body, and the Buddha's giving you the wisdom to understand of what's happening. So if you allow the bodily sensations to occur and you don't take any action there, if now it becomes anger in the mind, there's this feeling of the mind's angry. Now for a couple of hours, a couple of days, a couple of weeks, you're going to be angry and agitated and annoyed. This is the third foundation of mindfulness, that you need to be aware of the condition of the mind. Because if you don't cut it off as a bodily sensation, you don't cut it off as a feeling, you don't address it as a condition of your mind and cut it off and eliminate it there, it's going to feed what's called a mental object. What a mental object is a deeply rooted container that's in the mind that's now motivating unskillful conduct and unskillful behavior, which now through your intention, speech, and actions, you're bitter and harsh and hostile perhaps in the world. So in this example of anger, the mental object is ill will. This is a deeply rooted container in the mind that gets formed over the course of your life. You're not born with ill will in your mind. None of us are. We don't go into the nursery at the hospital hating other babies. But because of our lack of wisdom, we had certain cravings growing up. We had certain desire, certain longing, yearning. And when we got what we want, we got happy. But then when we didn't get what we wanted, we got sad and frustrated and irritated. This is why a baby is so giddy and so joyful, because they don't have ill will in their mind, right? They're laughing, they're goo-goo and gaggling, right? Because they don't have ill will. Their mind has not yet formed that mental object. But we have certain cravings as we grow up. We're 3 years old, we're 5 years old, we're 6 years old. We want that ice cream. We want that chocolate. We want that new toy. And we try to get mom or dad to buy it for us. And if they buy it for us, we get happy. We get excited. But then when they don't buy it for us, the mind's not getting its craving fulfilled. The mind gets angry. It gets frustrated. And we typically attribute it to something external. You're the worst mom ever. You didn't give me my ice cream, right? We get angry. We get bitter. We get harsh because those bodily sensations occurred. Then it became a feeling in the mind. It affected the condition of our mind for a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, or a week or two. We were angry or agitated or annoyed because we didn't get what we wanted. And now it forms this mental object of ill will. And it becomes a deeply rooted container in the mind. So what the Buddha is teaching you is to put this kind of roadblock at the bodily sensations, to cut off and let go of anything that's arising as a bodily sensation, so that now you can purify your mind of these mental objects, and he gives you the tools and the techniques to uproot these mental objects out of the mind. If you've had exposure to the 10 fetters, all of the 10 fetters are mental objects. Right? So things like conceit and ill will and sensual desire, all these things are mental objects that need to be uprooted and eliminated out of the mind. And as you purify the mind of these mental objects using the tools and techniques that the Buddha shares, now your mind will be peaceful and joyful all the time because you don't have this burden of carrying around this pollution of your mind. So you can uproot these mental objects and purify the mind and get to the brightness and the radiance and the joy. This is where your mind can be focused, have concentration, clarity, and deep memory because your mind is no longer polluted with these mental objects. You'll notice your personal, professional relationships will really blossom because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile in certain situations. So you're going to need this mindfulness or this general awareness of mind. That's where you'd like to start with this. But then more directly, you'd like to develop awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind in the mental objects. And you're going to need to understand mindfulness in the way that the Buddha taught it, which is this awareness of mind. Nowadays, people are using this word mindfulness quite a bit in the world. And what I tend to see people doing is they're replacing the word careful with mindful. That someone might say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to that table? What they're saying is, can you carefully carry this glass of water to that table, right? Mindfulness is having your awareness of mind, and more specifically, these 4 foundations of mindfulness. So while other people might be replacing the word careful with mindful, and you might hear that out in the world, it's important for you to understand that mindfulness is awareness of mind, that's what you would like to develop, this awareness of the mind, and more specifically, awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects, which is the life cycle that this discontentedness is going to go through due to your mind's cravings, desires, attachments. So let me know what questions you guys have here on mindfulness. Again, online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand electronically in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Or here at the temple, you can use the microphones. So Rex, looks like you have a question.
Yeah, I do, David. Since you want to cut off the arising as soon as possible, whether it be the body or the feeling or the mind, why not just focus on cutting off the negative and allowing the positive to arise?
When we talk about wholesome mental states, that's exactly what you would like to do. You would like to cut off and let go of any unwholesome mental states that are arising. But if you have a wholesome thing, like say you like to take your wife to dinner, you don't have to cut that off. You just take her to dinner. That's practicing generosity. In meditation, we do things one way where we cut off anything and everything that comes up. But in daily life, we're only cutting off the unwholesome. So if you have a wholesome thought, you would like to potentially go forward with that. But when it comes to discontentedness, which is a conditioned feeling, you would like to cut off all conditioned feelings, because a pleasant feeling that is conditional, that means your mind can only experience happiness if you get this thing. And then when you don't have that thing, your mind's going to end up in the painful feelings. So in order for you to get rid of the painful feelings, you're going to have to eliminate the conditioned pleasant feelings. Remember, they're conditional pleasant feelings. What a conditional pleasant feeling is when these conditions are met, I will be happy. But when they're not met, I won't be happy. So if you allow your mind to form a conditioned pleasant feeling, it's sunny outside, I'll be happy. My bank account is this, I'll be happy. I'm with my wife today, I'll be happy. I'm with my husband today, I'll be happy. I'm with my boyfriend or girlfriend today, I'll be happy. Those things are all temporary. They're impermanent. So if you allow your mind to cling to that and form a conditioned pleasant feeling, when those conditions change, you're now going to end up in the painful feelings. So in order to get to the permanent joy, the permanent happiness, where your mind is unconditioned, you're going to need to let go of the temporary happiness in order to get to the permanent joy. And this is what the mind needs to be able to do, and identify those conditional pleasant feelings that are arising as a bodily sensation. It's usually easier for somebody to develop this 4 foundations of mindfulness around painful feelings, that they can see the anger and the frustration. That's really easy for an individual to sometimes see the bodily sensations in certain situations, to be able to see those arising. The pleasant feelings are a little bit more challenging to be able to see the bodily sensations. And it's also not intuitive that, hold on a second, isn't life all about experiencing excitement? Isn't that what I should do? Well, you surely can, but your mind's going to end up in the painful feelings at some point. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you're experiencing plenty of joy, plenty of fun times, plenty of happiness, but it's unconditioned happiness, where in the unenlightened mind, the amount of happiness that you can experience becomes less and less and less and less and less as your expectations and your wants grow. As they grow more and more and more and more and more, there's fewer and fewer conditions, fewer and fewer situations where your mind can be happy, because these expectations have grown so much. So what you're doing is you're clearing out all these expectations, and you're saying, you know what? I can be happy when it's sunny out, and I can be happy when it's raining out, and I can be happy when there's a tornado, and I can be happy when there's a snowstorm. And you know what? I can be happy when my bank account's this, and I can be happy when my bank account's this. I'm not going to form my inner feelings based on these external things, because you start realizing that that's unwise. As long as you do that, your mind's going to go up and down and up and down and up and down. If you'd like to get to this permanent peace and this permanent joy and this permanent happiness, you're going to need to be able to train your mind to be happy no matter what is going on around you. You're aware that there's a war in the world, for example, but you're not forming your inner feeling based on the fact that there is a war or there isn't a war, right? You're not forming your inner feeling based on these external things. And this is where you can get to the permanent happiness and the permanent joy.
I just don't follow you, David. On the one hand, it's okay to experience unconditional happiness, yet in your example, you use the same thing. For example, happiness that it's sunny outside. That's also okay, whether it's conditional or unconditional. Why can't you just cut it off when it then becomes a source of disappointment or discontentedness. In other words, accept it, accept the happiness, regardless of where it comes from. But the moment that it becomes a source of discontent, that's when you cut it off. Instead of cutting it off as it first arises. In other words, doing away with bodily feelings, doing away with feelings, doing away with mental awareness. When it first appears, why can't you accept that? And then when it becomes a source of discontentedness, cut it off.
Okay, so I'll help you understand this. So you're not happy because it's sunny outside as an enlightened being. That's what the unenlightened mind is experiencing, is because it's sunny outside, I will now be happy, right? That's a conditioned feeling, that based on the condition that the sun exists, I will now be happy. As long as you allow your mind to do that, that sun is not permanent, so therefore your feeling of happiness is not permanent. It's a conditioned feeling. So when the sun goes away, you're not happy anymore. So an enlightened being is already happy before it's sunny outside. So therefore, when they see it's sunny outside, they are already happy before they ever saw it was sunny outside. So now, because they're having unconditioned joy and happiness, when the mind experiences this rain, you can still maintain your happiness because your happiness isn't based on the sun. So you're not happy because it's sunny. You're not happy because of the war. You're not happy because of the rain. You're happy despite these things having occurred. You're no longer forming a conditioned feeling. This is what the unenlightened mind is doing, is it's forming a conditioned feeling based on some condition that is occurring externally. And as long as you allow your mind to form a feeling based on something external, it's temporary. So you can never get to permanent happiness as long as the mind's forming conditioned feelings. If my bank account is this, I'll be happy. This is what the unenlightened mind does. But now when your bank account's here, you'll be sad because you allow the mind to experience the conditioned feeling based on a certain condition, and that condition is not permanent. You're going to experience the painful feelings. It's only a matter of time. So I'll give you another example. Say you have a certain job that you really want. It's the perfect job, perfect location, perfect salary. You chase after it. You really want it so badly. And now when you get the job, you get so excited. You get so happy. Oh, it's the perfect job. You work at this job for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Well, now the company goes out of business at 5 years and you get laid off. You're going to be sad. You're going to be angry. You're going to be frustrated. So instead, what you do is you maintain your joy. You realize that, hey, I'm going to pursue this new job, and this is wonderful that I'm going to get a new job. Okay, great, I got the new job. But you don't form your feelings based on the new job. That's the difference by the time you train your mind to get to enlightenment. And you may need to think about this more. You may need to reflect on it more. You need to spend more time asking questions to understand it. But this is what the unenlightened mind's doing, and it's not as intuitive to understand, why am I cutting off pleasant feelings? The reason why is because they're conditional. They're unsatisfactory because they're only temporary. As soon as you allow your mind to form a temporary happy feeling, that means it's temporary, and your mind's going to end up in the painful feelings. The mental qualities that we're talking about with enlightenment, they're unconditioned. So therefore, there's no condition that created them. So there's nothing that can occur that's going to take them away out of the mind. You're going to need to spend some more time thinking about it, it seems like. Yeah. These things, it's not going to be that you hear it one time and you immediately understand it, right? This is where you need to be reflective and introspective, and you need to ask questions, and you need to understand it. This is sometimes some people have challenges to be able to see this. So once you see it and you understand it, you got it and you understand. But right now you're just not there yet, and that's okay. So take your time, ask more questions, think about it over the course of many days and weeks. And then finally, when you come to the understanding to realize these temporary pleasant feelings are ultimately dissatisfying. When you're saying cut off the discontentedness, the happy feelings are the discontentedness. That is the conditional aspect of them. So it's not just the painful feelings that is discontentedness. Have you ever been so happy or so excited you like tripped and fell? Or you knocked something over and you broke it? No? Yes? Not that you can recall. Okay, so sometimes people experience this where they get so happy and so excited, their mind's discombobulated, right? It's shaken up. The mind's discontent. And in that situation, when your mind's discontent, you can't think clearly. You can't make wise decisions. And ultimately, some people make unwise decisions, right? And now when you make that unwise decision, you're going to experience an unwholesome result. So if you're looking to get to the permanent peace and permanent joy and only wholesome things coming back to you, you're going to need to make wise decisions. But you can't make wise decisions when your mind's shaken up with discontentedness. Pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant. Okay, so I see we have some more questions. Yes, ma'am. There it is.
I don't know exactly how to ask this, but is there a difference between the happiness that we get from the material things and the happiness that we get from the right view? Like, I mean, the feeling. I sometimes can feel like my happiness during a meditation or after a meditation or when my mind is peaceful is completely different from the happiness that comes from a material things. Mm-hmm. It would be more like peaceful than comparing to a happiness from a material thing like that. As you said, it's very, you are bubbling, you are like, oh my God, this is so cool, like a lot of excitement. Mm-hmm. Is there a difference?
Yes. And this is what we were just talking about. So there's the conditional feeling of happiness that is experienced in the unenlightened state. And that's ultimately dissatisfying because it's conditional, it's temporary. But then in the enlightened mind, you're experiencing the mental quality of happiness, where it's just always there. And it's a different type of happiness. It's not conditional happiness. And this is what you're ultimately working to get to on the path to enlightenment, is you're stripping away any conditional things that the mind needs. Like, if I don't have this, I can't be happy. That's what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. In the enlightened mind, hey, you're happy all day long. And that's the mental quality of being happy, because it's unconditional happiness. It's not a feeling. By the time you get to enlightenment, you're not experiencing a feeling of happiness, because a feeling arises, it changes, and it fades away. It's temporary, it's impermanent. By the time you get to enlightenment, you have a mental quality of you're just always happy. You wake up in the morning, you're happy. All day long, you're happy. You go to sleep, you're happy. You're not happy because of something. You just permanently have this mental quality of happiness because you've stripped away all the causes and conditions. You've stripped away all the cravings, desires, attachments, where I can only be happy in these situations. That's what the unenlightened mind is experiencing, that I can only be happy in these situations. In these situations, I can't be happy. That's what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. In the enlightened mind, you have the mental quality of just always being happy. And that's why that's why you experience it differently, because there's a feeling versus a conditioned feeling. Then there's the mental quality that as you're getting closer and closer to enlightenment, that mental quality of joy starts to peer through the mind more and more, and you start to experience more and more of this unconditioned happiness or joy.
Yeah, because I think sometimes it's a little bit confusing, because we use the same word like happiness to talk about two different things. I mean, so when I see the sun and I'm happy, it's a different type, like the conditional happiness is it is a different, my body feels in a different way when I have the happiness from meditation or things like this. So I think for me it's a little bit confusing, because we use the same word to describe two different states of mind, let's say.
I don't use the same word. I describe it differently. I describe conditional happiness as what you experience in the unenlightened state. And then I explain this mental quality or mental state of joy as an unconditioned mental quality. And what you're describing at you're happy because of the meditation, that's still a conditioned feeling. That's not the unconditioned joy that we're talking about. So if your mind's happy because of the meditation, it's still experiencing conditional feelings, because you take away the meditation and you're not happy anymore. So you would like to get to the point where your mind can maintain this unconditional mental state of the joy, or this unconditional happiness that is just always there and present all the time. David, you have a question? Yes, ma'am. If you'd like to get a microphone, do you have one back there? Yep, Rex has one to share with you.
I'm going back to right view, if that's okay. Is it that the Buddha was speaking of, like, there's sort of X number of right views, or is it basically any view which is aligned with wisdom is right view? I know that classically, like, awareness of impermanence and non-self and suffering or discontentedness, etc., would be right view. The understanding of the Four Noble Truths would be right view. But is it? Do you know what I'm saying? Because, like, oftentimes in the Buddha's teachings, there seems to be, it's like, this is right effort, for example. Is it a set number of things, as it were, that constitutes right view, or is it ultimately anything? There's these classical things like the understanding of the Four Noble Truths, and then there's also anything that's not aligned with, anything that is aligned with wisdom is right view. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Understand. So the core central teaching of right view is the Four Noble Truths. That is right view. If you ask somebody who's well versed in the teachings of the Buddha, and if you look at the Buddha's teachings itself, and you look at what is right view, it's the Four Noble Truths. Having the right view that it's the problem is discontentedness, the pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant, the conditioned feelings. The cause of that is craving, desire, attachment. The elimination of that is to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And the path forward is the Eightfold Path. That is right view. But then when the Buddha talks about accomplishment in view, because there's establishing right view and then there's accomplishment in view, there's other right views. But this is the core central establishing of right view. Those other right views are things like understanding the natural law of karma. This would be right view, to understand the cause and effect. Right view would be to look out at the world and be able to truly see true reality of what's truly occurring. Where in the unenlightened state, the mind has certain pollutions that hinders you from being able to see true reality. But when we talk about right view, classically in all the ways, we refer to the Four Noble Truths, because without that view, nothing else matters. If you thought that somebody else was causing you to be angry and frustrated, it doesn't matter what else you're doing. You need to establish right view as the very first step. In establishing right view is to have the breakthrough to understanding the Four Noble Truths.
Well, and I guess once it's right, if right view is the Four Noble Truths, then in the Fourth Noble Truth, the path leading to the cessation of dukkha, would contain many things, because it's understanding what is right effort, understanding what is right concentration, understanding. So it is quite simultaneously simple in that it's the Four Noble Truths, but has breadth and depth as well at the same time, because it must include also the Eightfold Path, for example.
No, so that's not 100% true what you're sharing. Or asking. So what you're thinking about there with the Fourth Noble Truth is having the right view is to understand that it is the Eightfold Path that is going to lead to your elimination of discontentedness. That would be the right view. So it's not all the other steps are also right view. Right. It's that you need to have the view to understand, the wisdom to understand that it is the Eightfold Path that's going to eliminate your discontentedness. That is the right view. Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Yes, ma'am. Question? Sounds like your mic's not on.
Last year I get ill, so I have to stay in the room for a long time. In a long time, I can't go outside to see to get the sunshine. So I feel depressed. I found there's no other way to get me better. I have to come to here, to some place didn't rain. Every day is sunshine. I try everything, including in meditation, to make me happy or have a unconditional joy. I can't do that. So that's why I didn't find the right way, or I really need sunshine. I just need to come here. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I stay in my homeland, but I stay. But in my town there is raining every day, so I cry every day. I really cry every day. When I fly here, I never cry again, no more. So this made me confused. I didn't meditation enough, or I just need sunshine.
Yeah, so you're not going to be able to get to permanent happiness through sunshine, because sunshine is not permanent. No matter where you live, you're not going to experience permanent sunshine in your life. So the reason why you're experiencing that now is because your mind sounds like it has a certain craving for sun. So therefore, when your mind's getting what it wants, it gets conditional pleasant feelings. But as soon as it rains, sounds like you're going to be frustrated or irritated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. So you can't get to permanent happiness by external things. It's not possible. So you need to be able to train your mind, not just with meditation, but these other teachings as well. There's an entire path to enlightenment that you haven't learned yet, that you need the wisdom to be able to learn, reflect on it, to verify it, and then to practice it. And as you implement these teachings more and more in your life, you eradicate the pollutions of your mind. You'll experience more peace and more joy, ultimately getting to enlightenment, ultimately, if you get that far, where your mind will be peaceful and joyful permanently. But you won't get to that by just sunshine or certain foods or certain clothes or certain money. These are all external things that are impermanent. None of those things are going to produce permanent happiness. And that's what the Buddha is teaching you, is that those are all conditional feelings. And that's what those conditional feelings are doing. They're arising based on some condition. And because these conditions are impermanent, your happiness isn't permanent. So if you would like to learn here, you're more than welcome to come here. We have classes on Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday. We have courses and retreats throughout the month and throughout the year that you can attend here at the temple. You can attend online when you go back to your home country. There's books and videos and podcasts that are all available for you at no cost. You can learn the wisdom of how to train your mind that you just don't have right now. And that's where you'll see the real results, because you'll start understanding the real problem. This right view that we were just talking about, that's what establishes for you what the real problem is, so that then you can actually solve it with the tools and techniques that the Buddha taught. But since you don't have that wisdom right now, that's why you continue to have those struggles. But if you would like to keep learning and keep growing, you're more than welcome to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so it looks like Keely, you have a question on Facebook. If you'd like to ask your question, go ahead, ma'am. Or not Facebook, on Zoom.
Yes, David. Whenever I watch a movie, it's easy for me to put myself into the characters in the movie. I'll be happy or sad according to the plot. And I'm aware the bodily sensations, like I will laugh or cry. Because of this, I seldom watch a movie in a theater. So my question is, how can I maintain a peaceful mind rather than being emotional when watching a movie? Thank you.
Sure, I'll definitely help you. Sounds like somebody's mic might be on. If you guys could check your mics and just be sure they're off. So what you're describing there, Keely, is conditional feelings. Based on this contact of watching the movie and seeing what's going on there, the mind's going to either go up or it's going to go down, right? And we would call this actually a good movie or good artist or good directing or good producing, right? That's like the artistry of things like movies or artwork or other things like that, that it elicits some type of emotion. And then this is usually described as a really good artist and a really good producer, which I would agree, like if you can produce that kind of thing. But as an individual, as a person, you're trying to train your mind to not have conditional feelings. And that's what we're talking about. So it's the Eightfold Path. This actually combines with this person on YouTube is asking the same question as you, Keely. They're asking, how would you deal with unwanted negative thoughts? Well, it's the Eightfold Path. You got to learn how to train your mind to no longer have those. But as long as you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind and you don't understand the Eightfold Path, you're not going to be able to eliminate the unwanted and unwelcomed thoughts. You're going to need to get to a point where you fully understand the Eightfold Path, all the 8 factors and you dial it in closer and closer. It's not just one thing that you do. It's not just 2 things. There's a whole host of factors that you need to learn and dial in closer and closer. And this is what's going to produce the ability for you to no longer form your inner feelings based on some condition. That if I'm watching this movie and it's funny, I'll laugh. And if it's sad, I'll cry. This is a conditional feeling that you're forming inner feelings based on some external thing, and you would like to get to the point where the mind's not doing that anymore. And this is what I'm describing to you with the Eightfold Path of how to do that.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome. I think your microphone back there, I think it's on. Yeah, if you can turn it off, that's that little crackling sound. Yeah, it's on. Okay. All right, so I'm not seeing any other questions here. So let me share with you this last step of the Eightfold Path, which is called right concentration. I'm not going to read this for you because the words of the Buddha are very helpful, and you're going to need to read this ultimately to be able to understand it. But what he's explaining to you here in the Eightfold Path is he's explaining to you the results of putting together all the other steps of the Eightfold Path, that you're going to experience what's referred to as the jhanas. What the jhanas are, they're preliminary phases that the mind moves through on its way to the first stage of enlightenment. This is like an indication for you that you're putting together the Eightfold Path really well. This is like the light bulb is flickering and you're starting to experience these improved qualities of mind. And as you're making your way to the first stage of enlightenment, you will experience these 4 phases. This is the mind has absorbed a certain amount of meditation, a certain amount of mental absorption of the teachings. You've put together right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration are all starting to come together for an extended period of time. And now you're starting to experience these improved qualities of mind. So that's what he's explaining here in his words. But what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to explain to you how to practice right concentration, because there's other teachings where the Buddha talks about how to practice right concentration, but he doesn't put that in the Eightfold Path. He puts it in other teachings that integrate into the Eightfold Path. In the Eightfold Path, under right concentration, he's explaining the results, that this is what you will experience once you have right concentration. So now I'm going to teach you guys how to practice right concentration based on the Buddha's other teachings. So right concentration is practiced through developing a daily meditation practice and practicing singleness of mind in daily life. These are the 2 aspects that are going to help you to practice right concentration and round out the Eightfold Path. That you're going to need a consistent, ongoing, daily meditation practice of breathing mindfulness meditation and then eventually loving kindness meditation. In this program of the group learning program, I'm going to be teaching loving kindness meditation in about a week and a half from now. That not this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday, you're going to learn loving kindness meditation, because these are the 2 that you need in order to address 2 of the 3 primary problems in the mind. When I get to chapter 8, I'm going to be describing the 3 poisons of craving, anger, and ignorance. These are the 3 high-level issues that are in the mind, where breathing mindfulness meditation addresses elimination of craving, desire, attachment, and loving kindness meditation eliminates the anger, hatred, and ill will. It essentially rewires your mind to have love and kindness so that you can then go practice through your intention, speech, and actions being loving and kind. So you're going to need to develop this consistent, ongoing meditation practice of 2 to 3 meditations per day for 30 minutes or more. And this may sound like a lot for you right now, depending on where you are in your life. You may need to create some space in your life, and people usually will build up to this over time. It usually takes 6 months, a year, even 2 years to gradually build up to this level of frequency and this amount of duration. So what you'll notice is frequency is more important than duration. So if it's a matter of 1 meditation for 30 minutes a day, or 30 minutes a session, or if it's 2 meditations for 15 minutes each, go for the 2 meditations for 15 minutes each, and then gradually expand that. But if you're at 1 meditation for 5 minutes or 1 meditation for 10 minutes, okay, that's where you're at. But you're going to need to gradually expand this to get to the point where it's 2 or 3 per day for 30 minutes or more. And as I mentioned, it can sometimes take 6, 12, or even 24 months for an individual to build up to that level of frequency. You might need to strip away some unbeneficial things. Maybe you're spending a lot of time on social media or surfing the web or YouTube or other things that are not producing real benefit in your life. And as you start clearing away these unbeneficial things, you'll make up more time to be able to have available to you to do things like meditation. And that's what you'd like to ultimately build up. there's 2 specialized meditations that the Buddha teaches that aren't needed by every single person, but in some unique situations, an individual might need these, and this is where they're available. These are things like elimination of sexual cravings. Like if you have a lot of sexual craving, you're looking to eliminate that, there's a meditation to help you with that. And there's a meditation to realize non-self that will help you as well. But everybody's going to need breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. These other 2 specialized meditations are only needed in unique situations, and they're documented in Volume 1, Chapter 11. And I've taught about these at different times. And then as students talk with me privately and they need those, I will recommend to them to learn those meditations. So this program focuses on breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation, helping you to build that up, but you're going to need to do that work. You're going to need to apply the right effort to build up your meditation practice over the course of your day and week. Your enlightenment isn't going to be determined whether you miss meditation today or not, because you're going to miss meditation here and there. So if you were doing 2 meditations a day for a month, that's 60 meditations. But if you were to get 52 or 55 or 58 meditations in, you'll still get to enlightenment, because your enlightenment is going to be determined that over the next 2 years, the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, can you consistently meditate 2 or 3 times a day? Realizing you're going to miss occasional meditations here and there, but can you consistently put together over a long-term period a meditation practice that's going to support you in life? Whereas if you meditated once a month, you're not going to see enlightenment in this life, right? Or if you meditated 3 times a month, you're not going to see enlightenment in this life. But if you can consistently meditate 2 or 3 times a day, realizing that sometimes you're going to miss here and there, you can still get to enlightenment, because over the course of 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you're consistently meditating on an ongoing basis. That's what's going to determine if you get to enlightenment or not. So if you missed meditation today, what do you do next? Do you allow that to be a week or 2 or a month or 2 that you miss meditations? Or do you like, hey, I missed meditation today. Let me get right back into this. No need to feel guilty. No need to feel shameful. Just put some more dedication, some more diligence into your practice. Arise the effort and the energy to eliminate any complacency. And now start meditating. And this is what's going to help you to develop your practice on a consistent, ongoing basis. Then you're going to need to develop singleness of mind. What this is where you're doing just one thing at a time. You might have been taught to multitask. This is part of this lack of wisdom in the world, this unknowing of true reality, that if you've been taught to multitask, your mind is rapidly cycling from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. You're not actually doing multiple things at one time. So if you're talking on the phone to your mom, you're watching TV, and you're eating a sandwich, you're not actually doing all 3 of those things at one time. You're talking to your mom for a couple of seconds, you're watching TV for a couple of seconds, and you're eating for a couple of seconds. Your mind's rapidly cycling. And this is why it takes you a lot longer to talk on the phone. This is why when you get off the phone, you don't even remember what it is that you talked about. You might have agreed to things that you totally forgot about, right? So you actually aren't being productive at all. The mind falsely believes that you're being more productive by doing these 3 things at one time. But in reality, your conversation went longer. You probably said things that you didn't mean to say. You might need to go clean that up with your mom. You might have damaged your relationship, right? You might have agreed to things that you need to now go back and talk to them about. So if you were to just have your conversation, it might be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and you're done, right? You handled it. You brought forth your full wisdom to practice right speech and all the other teachings, and you don't have to go back and clean anything up. You fully comprehend what it is that you were having on that conversation. And if you're watching TV, you can fully comprehend that, and you can benefit from it. Or if you're eating, you can just eat and focus on eating and just be done with it. Whereas if you're eating and watching YouTube, or you're eating and surfing the web or something like that, or social media, your mind's rapidly cycling back and forth. There's a craving there that you don't feel comfortable just sitting there and eating. You had to have some kind of stimulation, and you're not solving your problem. You're going to be lonely and bored because you have a craving in there that you want stimulation. So you got to push away the YouTube and the Facebook and all those other things and just focus on eating. And that's what's going to help you to be able to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment for this constant stimulation, where you can just be completely content and completely joyful just eating. not because you're eating, but just eating, your mind's already joyful. You don't need any condition to be met in order to be happy, that you're just already have the mental state of happiness, this unconditioned happiness, that it doesn't need YouTube in order to be happy, or it doesn't need this food to be happy. The mind is just unconditionally happy. So as you're going about your day, if you're noticing your mind's wandering, like you're washing dishes and your mind's wandering in thought, cut that off, apply right effort, bring the mind back. Or if you're in a business meeting and your mind's wandering and you're daydreaming, cut that off and bring your mind back. More and more, your mind will get used to practicing right concentration, where it'll just be focused and it'll be clear, it'll be concentrated, you'll have deep memory. It's kind of like a piece of wood and a steel rod. If you were to drag this steel rod back and forth over this wood, you're creating a groove in this wood, and this steel rod's getting deeper and deeper into the groove. But initially, the steel rod's going to bounce around a whole lot because there's no groove there yet. So your mind's going to bounce around because it's not well trained through meditation and through practicing singleness of mind. But more and more as you practice it, it'll get this groove in the wood and it'll get deeper and deeper into the wood. And then when it pops out, you're going to know it. With your mindfulness, you'll know that you're not practicing singleness of mind and you'll be able to pull it back. But more and more, if you practice singleness of mind with your meditation and in daily life, you'll get this real deep groove in the wood and the steel rod will never pop out. That you'll just always be focused. You'll always be concentrated. So even right now, listening to me, you might need to be practicing singleness of mind, where you notice if your mind's wandering and thinking about lunch or thinking about something else, you might need to cut that off and bring your mind back into the present moment. And now more and more when you do that, your mind will just be like, all right, I'm just going to stay in the present moment. But it's going to take time. It's almost like it's almost like a post or a pillar. And there's these animals that are tied to it, and they keep pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling. Eventually, those animals are going to realize, you know what? No sense in pulling anymore. I'm just going to sit down by this post or this pillar, because every time I pull, I keep getting yanked back. I keep getting yanked back. Well, your mind is going to be the same way. You've got to teach your mind. You've got to discipline your mind. You need this mental control or this mental discipline that every time it pulls and it goes somewhere else, you yank it back and you yank it back and you yank it back. And then eventually your mind gives in. And it's like, you know what? I'm not going to pull anymore. So those cravings, desires, attachments are eliminated from the mind through meditation and through practicing singleness of mind, along with all the other factors of the Eightfold Path that the Buddha shared. Okay, so I'll open up for questions here, but I'll just show you guys kind of a little bit of a summary of these 3 steps that we talked about today. That right effort is taking initiative to eliminate unwholesome aspects of the mind and cultivating certain wholesome qualities. I teach this to my young son. I say, kick out the unwholesome stuff and bring in the wholesome, right? That's what you're doing with right effort. You need to apply the effort to do that. Right mindfulness is awareness of the mind, but more specifically, the 4 foundations of mindfulness: the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. You're going to need to build awareness of all 4 of these things. And then there's the concentration, practicing breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness, and practicing singleness of mind in daily life. This is what's going to produce the concentration in your mind to now be able to put in place things like right speech, right action, and right livelihood, because you wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't have the concentration, and you didn't have the mindfulness, and you didn't have the right effort. So all 8 of these factors are actually working together. It's not that you master one before you go to the other. It's the 8 dials where you're dialing in a better and better quality mind, just like you're dialing in a better and better quality sound in your speakers. And as you dial these into your life, this is where you'll see your mind and your life becomes more peaceful and more joyful, ultimately getting to the point where you're always joyful. There's that mental state of joy that's always there. Okay, do you guys have any questions on right concentration or any other aspect of the path?
Yeah. How do I combine the Vipassana meditation with this?
So from what I understand about Vipassana, I've never been to one of those retreats. What I understand is the first 3 days they practice breathing mindfulness meditation, right? And then they practice loving kindness meditation as well. So that plugs in as right concentration. What you're doing is you're developing your mind to have awareness of the mind and awareness of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. I understand they also do body scanning in there. that's helping you to develop awareness of the bodily sensations. And that's what you're working to do with that. So it plugs in as right concentration, but it's helping you to build the quality of mindfulness, or the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Okay, any questions online? Let's see, I'm not seeing any questions here. Okay, so what I'll do then is just end by thanking all of you guys for coming to learn the teachings of the Buddha, because learning and practicing this Eightfold Path, it's the very best thing that you could ever do for your entire life. By dialing this in closer and closer, you're going to see a better and better quality mind and a better and better quality life by dialing in each one of these factors. And over the last 3 Sundays, I've walked students through in a detailed way each of these individual factors. And what I'm going to be doing in our next class next Sunday is I'm going to be sharing with you the 10 fetters and the various aspects that you need in order to move the mind to this enlightened mental state, so that you can understand the 4 stages of enlightenment. Because it's through eradicating the 10 fetters, or these 10 pollutions, that the mind then moves through the 4 stages of enlightenment. So once you're practicing the Eightfold Path, you'll be experiencing the jhanas, and then the mind moves into these 4 stages of enlightenment. So now at the beginning of the group learning program, now that I've shared the core central teaching, I'm going to now show you what's underlying all of this. There's this kind of engine of the 10 fetters that you're trying to eliminate from the mind, so that then you can move through the 4 stages of enlightenment. And after next Sunday, then we'll actually start from the very beginning of the book, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, each Sunday from there forward. So in order to get to enlightenment, an individual is going to need to start with learning, reflecting, and practicing the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, developing a meditation practice, and focusing on the elimination of the 10 fetters. These are all things that I teach in these core, central, and fundamental programs that I share. And what I like to share with students is, as you're developing your path to enlightenment, is never, ever, ever, ever give up. Because no matter where you are in life, whether you're just starting on the path or you've been learning, if you know your mind's not enlightened, you're experiencing anger or frustration, annoyment, disappointment, and other feelings like this, your mind hasn't yet cultivated the full wisdom that you need to eradicate these. And if you give up on the path to enlightenment, this is like, all right, I'm just going to be angry for the rest of my life. This is just relegating yourself to sadness and frustration. I'm just going to be annoyed and frustrated and agitated the rest of my life. I'm just going to be resentful for the rest of my life. That is optional. You don't have to do that. You don't have to relegate yourself to that. You can get to the point where you eradicate all of that from the mind. But if you give up, you won't be able to do that. So I encourage you to stay dedicated and diligent and determined in developing your practice. And if you'd like to do that, there's various courses and retreats and programs to be able to help you. Whether you're here in Chiang Mai or no matter where you are in the world, you can tune into our live streams. And if you can't attend live, then you can watch the recordings. And I'm more than pleased to help you both in classes and then spending time with you personally to relate the teachings to your personal life as well. So thank you for taking time to help yourself, to help those close to you, because as you're becoming more peaceful and more joyful, the people around you are going to be experiencing a more peaceful and joyful person, that you're causing less and less harm in the world. And because of this, you're helping all of humanity. So progressing on the path to enlightenment, it's helping you, it's helping those close to you, and it's helping all of humanity. So thank you for your interest to learn, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.